Welcome to chapter 11, where we are going to spend some time understanding how to control flow in Java programs, that is using the branching statements. In every program, there are moments where we need to change the natural order of the program execution. Maybe you want to exit a loop early, skip an iteration, or return from a method once a condition is met. That is exactly where the branching statements come into picture. We'll understand how break interrupts the loop while executing. We'll understand how continue skips that particular iteration while executing, and we'll understand how return statements helps us exit from a method, sometimes with a value or sometimes with nothing. By the end of this chapter, we'll be able to write Java code that's not just functional but precise and efficient in how it flows. Branching statements in Java are the control flow statements that alter the normal sequence of operations during the program execution. These statements allow the program to branch off and either exit a loop or skip certain parts of code or return from a particular method. Branching statements provide the flexibility to control the flow of execution based on a certain condition. Let's quickly look at the break statement. The break statement is used to exit a for loop or a switch statement prematurely. When a break statement is encountered, the program control immediately jumps to the next set of statements outside the loop or the switch block. You can use break to stop the execution of loop when a particular condition is met, and in the switch statement you can use break to terminate the execution of the complete switch statement and prevent the execution from falling to the subsequent switch cases. In this example, when you're using break, this is going to break the loop when I is equal to 5. So I is starting out with 0 and it's incrementing in steps, and when it reaches a point where I is equal to 5, the loop condition is gonna break. That is, the control is gonna move away from the for loop back into the program execution. And in the switch statement, we have break. So whenever this particular case is met, it is going to execute this program and it is going to break that operation. Again, the control moves away from the switch statement back to the normal code. So that is how break statement works. Then comes the continue statement. This is used to skip an iteration based on a condition and proceed to the next iteration and not completely terminating the loop. So in this case, I starts at 0 and I is less than 5 and I is incrementing at each step. So when I is equal to 2, it is going to skip that part of iteration and it is going to move on to the next iteration. Then comes the return statement. This is used to exit a method and optionally return a value from a method execution. We will see in the object-oriented programming section what a method is, how it works. For now, let's just remember what an return statement is. So it is used to return a control from a method to the actual code where the method is being called, and it can optionally return a value. So in methods, this is used to terminate the execution of a method, and in void methods, it is going to stop execution of that method without returning any value. Now let's quickly go through the code example. I've created a new class for branching statements in Java. First, let's start with the break statement in a loop. So we have a simple for loop structure here. It has a counter variable I, and I is less than 10 and it's incrementing in 1. If I is equal to 5, break that loop and print out the iteration value. Let's write some code for the break statement in a switch block as well. So we have switch day, and int day is defined as 3. So this is the case 3. So this is what it should evaluate to, and we have a break statement here. Now let's save the program and run. Now here you see the iteration 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once the condition is met here, that is I is equal to 5, the control is breaking. That is, the control has left the loop structure here. The loop has exited here when it has encountered that break condition. In the similar way, here it's Wednesday because the case is 3, and once it has printed this statement, once the switch block encounters break statement, the switch block is going to exit and the control is going to go back to the source code here. On the other way around, we have continue. We have a simple for statement here, and I is equal to 0, I is less than 5 and I plus plus. If I is equal to 2, continue, save the program and run, and you see 0, 1. So iteration 2 here is missing. That is missing because it has encountered a continue block here. So when the condition of I is equal to 2 is true, it is going to continue. That is, it is going to skip that iteration and then move on to the next iteration. Hence, owing to that skipping part, it is not printing the iteration 2 here. So that is how continue works in the for loop. Let's have a look at a return statement in a void method and return statement with a value. First, we would need to create methods themselves. We haven't discussed what methods are, but let's just write a very simple method here. We have created this method block here outside the class. So the name of the method here is check number, and this is public static, and this is void. That means that it is not going to return anything, but it does take an number as an input parameter. So this method takes this number as input. If the number is less than 0, that is, the number is negative, so it needs to return that control immediately. Elsewise, it will print out the number is positive. Now, how do you call this method? Here we just write check number 5. We are passing 5 as a value. So in this case, 5 is less than 0. This is not true, so it should technically print out the number is positive. Let's save the program and run, and you see the number is positive. Let's call this method once again, check number, and let's change the value to -3. Now run the program and see nothing is happening here because the control has returned back. When it encounters that -3 is less than 0, which in this case is true, it is simply going to return that control back to the code where this method is being called, and nothing happens. Similarly, we can add another method which is going to return something. This is a simple method to return a sum, that is add numbers. So this is in fact returning an integer value, and this is the name of the method, and these are the two input parameters. Like, you need to add two numbers. That's the reason we have two parameters, a and b. So it is simply going to return a plus b. Since this is returning an integer value, we first need to have an integer in place. So we have int result, and we are calling this method add numbers, and we are passing two values into it, 10 and 20. So the result would be 30. We simply write a print statement to print out the result, and we save the program and run. You see the sum of 10 and 20 is 30. So this is working as expected, and this is how you are going to use the break, the continue, and the return statement. Let's have a look at some of the best practices and tips while working with these branching statements. Use break very carefully to avoid confusing the control flow. Break does help us exit the loop or the switch statement block. It is useful, but too many breaks is gonna make your code harder to follow. In switch statement, it is important that you use the break statement to make sure that other cases are not executed and the control safely moves away from the switch statement to the code. Use continue sparingly. Continue skips the rest part of your code, so be aware of the effect this continue keyword is gonna have. Avoid using break and continue in deeply nested loops. Deep nesting with multiple exits makes it difficult to understand the overall flow of the code. Think of performance, but not at the cost of clarity. To wrap up this chapter, we understood the concepts of branching statements in Java. Break helps us exit the loop or the switch statement. Continue helps us skip a particular iteration, and return helps exit a method and optionally sending back a value. Together, these statements add flexibility, clarity, and control to your logic, especially while working with loops and method-based designs. Coming up in the next chapter, we will be discussing the concepts of arrays in Java. We'll explore how to store, organize, and access collection of data using arrays. That's about this chapter. I'm Venkatesh Mudaliar. Till I see you again in the next one. Cheers.